Welcome back, WNST. Many trips down to the Music City part of the world anymore once we left the division, which I'm sure many of them were happy we left the division. We get to go to exotic locales now like Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. This guy has been hanging around Nashville for the better part of a couple of decades. I mean, I actually got to know him with Coach Barry Trotz on the long trail of the Nashville Predators. I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. John Glennon joins us live from Nashville. He was a longtime writer, columnist, and sports writer for the Tennessean. Now doing some stuff at Titans Online. You can find him at Glennon Sports out on Twitter and probably anywhere the Predators or the Titans are playing. What's going on, John? How you been, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on, and we're coming down there. We're throwing a party at Piranha's on Friday night and Saturday. You got the hot chicken going on. They got the donut burgers happening there and the beer and stuff. But I came in last year. I had Steve Gorman from the Black Crowes on earlier this week, and I came in to see his Led Zeppelin thing last year, Christmas week. And, I mean, I literally snuck in. I mean, I was in town literally 20 hours, got in there at lunchtime and left at 6 in the morning the next day. It was the week that the Music City Bowl was going on. So you had Tennessee fans, and you had half of Nebraska there. And I just can't get over the skyline. I can't get over the growth. Other than something like Vegas that I saw back in the 90s where something went from small to big very, very quickly, I've never seen a major American city in my lifetime grow the way Nashville has.
It's incredible. When I think back to the start of the Predators back in 1998, and which was about the time that I got here, and just the growth downtown that we've seen since then. It's unbelievable, and usually, when people talk about a hot city or an it city, that usually lasts for about a year or so. But for Nashville, it just seems like it keeps going and going. We've seen these stories, not local stories obviously, but national stories talking about what a good place Nashville is and how it's the it city and so forth. So we're kind of loving it, and you talk about that area that you guys will be heading to this weekend. It's just, I mean, it's a nonstop party down there. Whatever time of day, whatever day of the week you want to go down to the Second Avenue and the honky tonks, it is always going on. So it should be a great weekend for you guys.
Well, I mean, we grew up with this Predators background, and I want to get to that. I want to get to the Titans. I've talked to so many people this week. I want to give you a chance to talk about this Phil Supernaw piece because Soup spent some time in the locker room around here. I know he banged around in the league trying to catch on. Man, you wrote a really interesting piece, and I saw it pinned at the top of your Twitter out there at Glennon Sports, and I want to give you a chance to talk about it because I think some people around here may have a thought on him. I know, he got knocked out of a game in preseason a couple years ago that I went up and, glad that he was doing well. But I had no idea how to piece together the country music side of Doug Supernaw. I did not know the relationship. I guess the last name, because I'm not a country music guy, I'm a rock and roll guy. If his last name was Lee or Lifeson or Perd or, Van Halen or something like that, I would have known it. And I obviously know the Tim McGraw, Tug McGraw thing, right? But this is a very sort of similar kind of story to some degree, but I want to let you explain it, then I'm going to send everybody out to Titans Online. If you love country music or you remember Doug Supernaw, the musician, or Philip Supernaw, the short-term tight end of the Ravens, then this is an interesting piece.
Yeah, it is a little different, but Titans tight end Philip Supernaw, his dad, Doug Supernaw, had some big country hits back in kind of the mid to late 90s, had a couple number one hits, I believe, but there was always kind of some family trouble, and when Philip Supernaw was pretty young, Doug Supernaw and Philip's mom divorced, and they really, after the age of probably about 12 or 13 for Philip, he never really saw much of his dad. His dad had a separate family. Philip, of course, was with his mom and his sister. I think his dad had some difficulties too. A lot of success right away. And then kind of struggled. There were some arrests, some situations that Doug Supernaw was probably not too happy about, and those two guys kind of were estranged for several years. Well, just this past summer, they kind of had a little bit of a reunion of sorts after a long time not speaking, not seeing one another. Philip actually went to see him perform at the Country Music Association Festival here in Nashville, and the two kind of talked and talked a little bit about old times and took a few pictures together as well. And And really, it was good, I think, for both of these guys to kind of reconnect. And Doug Supernaw is in a better place now. He's trying to make a comeback on the country music trail, and Philip is supporting him. So it was kind of a heartwarming tale to see these two guys back in touch with one another, and both really trying to continue their careers right here in Music City, where it all began for Doug Supernaw and where Philip Supernaw was actually born as well.
Yeah, it's amazing because I've gone around my whole life with a famous last name, and, anytime I say Aparicio, anybody says, hey, are you related to the ball player? And I'm like, yeah, he's my cousin. He's my dad's first cousin. That's how I'm in Baltimore, But I can't imagine if it were my father and I didn't like him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad I never went up to Phil Supernaw because I saw him in the locker room. He was on a team 2 different times for long stretches of time. And I never even thought of that. Like, now that I see the story, I'm like, I do remember, a Doug Supernaw, a sort of country guy, a little, a couple decades ago. And I didn't, the rap sheet and all that other stuff, I don't know anything about that. But I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for him to have people coming up and asking him about his dad all the time in the South, right?
Exactly. And especially, obviously, when you come here to play in Nashville, and this is really his 3rd year, as soon as he signed, the first questions for Philip Supernaw, because people were aware, even though it was a while ago that Doug Supernaw was a big guy with the #1 singles, people still remembered. And so obviously the first questions were, well, how's your dad? Is your dad going to come see you? And at that time, Philip Supernaw, there really was no relationship. It was very tough for him. He really didn't talk about it much at all. And in fact, I think the only real reason that he kind of opened up and talked about his relationship with his father now is because they have kind of had that little reunion, and they have maybe opened up the lines of communication a little bit. So he was willing more to talk about it now. But yeah, it was very tough, and he talked about how his mom sort of had to kind of shield him, from all kind of the difficult things that were going on in Doug Supernaw's life after he had that early success in the music field. That his mom sort of made it very separate. Hey, don't worry, your dad might be going through some tough times, but that's not your fault. You don't worry about it. You live your life, and Philip Supernaw is a pretty tough, pretty self-reliant guy, and he's pretty strong in that regard. But nonetheless, again, good. Anytime you see, kind of a father and a son reconnecting, after a long time away, it's just good to see.
And both who have, created careers for themselves and been very driven and accomplished. He's driven and accomplished. He's John Glennon, Glennon on Sports. You can find him out on Twitter there, as well as sometimes at the Titans website. You can read that piece on Phil Supernaw and his dad, country music superstar Doug Supernaw from a couple years ago. You can read that. It's about a week and a half old now, out on the Titans website, and you can find it pinned on John's Twitter. This portion of our programming brought to you by Compass Point Golf Course in Pasadena. It is the best place to play golf this fall and winter. Get on down there. They got events. They got craft beers. They got friendly folks. And if if the weather's good, you've always got a course down there close to home. CompassPointGolf.com is the way to find them. The legend continues over at Costas Inn. I did my Dundalk High Hall of Fame crab meal over there. It's good enough for today's show. It's good enough for Hoda and Kathy Lee. Good enough for my mom who loved Costas. A fat crab's cold beer. The legend continues. CostasInn.com. And yes, they ship them as well. John, we're going to be down there in downtown and coming in, and I remember all these many trips we had back in the day, playoff games, non-playoff games, big regular season games and all that. We're going to be down there eating those donut burgers and doing the hot chicken and all that stuff down at Piranha's on Friday and Saturday for all the fans that are traveling. We're coming in to see Mariota, right? And I don't know what version of this we're going to get. I don't know how the passing game, and they're trying to get that kid out at wide receiver and actually get him onto the field. But I know this. They probably want to run the ball, and they have 2 guys that can do it pretty well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Probably one of the better 1-2 running back tandems in the NFL with DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. Now, DeMarco's a little bit banged up right now. He's got a shoulder and he's got a hamstring injury that's kind of nagged him off and on all year. So right about now, they're kind of 50-50 in the last 2 games in terms of snaps and carries between Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray. The Titans' running game has been good. But it has not been great, I would say, like it was last year. So, I think with the week off they had, with the bye week here, that's one of the things that they've tried to kind of correct, get it back on sort of that elite level that really dominated the opponents last year.
You and I have been at this a long time. From Barry Trotz had hair and it had color in it. The last, when we met each other, and he likes to joke about that as well. He comes out and does a swabbing once a year with us with the Caps up here in Baltimore. To see Dick LeBeau doing this at 80, and a guy like you that's chronicled sports in that marketplace for so long. Malarkey comes in. There's a lot of veteran guys, on that coaching staff just in general, but him specifically and what he's trying to do with the defense and these 21, 22, 23-year-old kids. He's fallen in love with this Byard kid, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he did last year when they drafted him out of middle down here. Mm-hmm.
Well, and taking an 80-year-old guy with that kind of pep in his step, we'll never see this again, right? An 80-year-old defensive coordinator in this league.
It would be hard to believe. It's funny. You watch him out at practice and you watch him running guys through the drills and shouting encouragement and this kind of thing, and then you think to yourself, or at least I do. My dad, who was back there in the D.C. area. My dad is 85 years old, and I congratulate my dad when I talk to him. I think it's great that he's probably 3 times or 4 times a week he walks a mile or so, and I think that's great. Say, hey, Dad, you're doing great for 85 years old. And I turn around, got Dick LeBeau, who's only 5 years younger, and he's running the defense here still. It's amazing, and like you say, probably the most impressive thing about it is the way that he gets along. That there's not that giant generational gulf or gap that you might think. With these guys. In fact, one of the things that the Titans defense or the Titans entire team enjoys most, and they do this every year, is that right around Christmas time, Dick LeBeau gathers the entire team and reads the night before Christmas to them, and it's one of the most popular things that the Titans do. So he's very liked and very well respected here.
Well, and he only played for 2 families ever, right? I mean, or was around after a coach for 2 families. He played in Detroit forever, Paper Line and all that stuff in the 60s, but and as a Hall of Fame player as well. But I want to point that part out too. But I mean, in working in the league, he worked for 2 families. He worked for the Browns and he worked for the Rooneys forever and ever and ever. The way those places were run really probably does harken back to the 60s, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no question. He enjoys the stability that he's found down here as well. And it's not, the thing about Dick LeBeau too, you're not necessarily getting the same thing all the time. He's still a guy at the age of 80 that likes to come up with inventive new ways to come in with the zone blitz and the various forms of defense to surprise offenses and so forth. So it's not as if he's just kind of hanging on out there. He's still a guy that's really still very creative and innovative in terms of what he's doing with the Titans defense.
Well, some would call him the best NFL coach of all time. And then there's Mike Malarkey, who took over the program, kind of managed to hang on. Bro, you've been around there since Bud brought the team up and killed the Derrick and moved them over from Memphis to the Erector set over there at Vanderbilt, where they're going to be playing Western Kentucky this weekend. And, I mean, you've seen everything with this. Give me the lowdown on the ownership and the way the team's being run and Malarkey, because they didn't really go out into the market and interview, did they?
Not a great deal. They did interview a few other coaches, but I think the controlling owner, Amy Adams Strunk, was from early on really liked Mike Malarkey and wanted to give him a chance. He came on as interim coach, and the Titans were okay at times under him as interim, not necessarily great, but I think she really wanted to give him the chance. As a full-time head coach. She thought he deserved that opportunity. And there was a lot of skeptical fans, certainly in Nashville that wanted a young, fresh name, a bright rising star or something along those lines. But, Mike Malarkey brought in an identity. There's no doubt about it. He brought in a winning attitude. You look at what this team did last year. They just missed the playoffs, finished 9-7, beat, I think, 5 or 6 playoff teams, 5 or 6 teams with winning records. So it's that was about as good. It's been obviously a drought here in Nashville, but last year, both the style of play and the fact that they really started to beat good teams consistently, was a huge breath of relief, I think, for Nashville down here. And in fact, what he's done really is he set the bar pretty high for himself last year, because everybody figured, okay, You went 9-7. You just missed out on the playoffs because of a tiebreaker. And maybe add a couple of pieces in the offseason as the Titans did. I think there were some pretty high expectations this year, and right now they're sort of in a wait-and-see mood. They're 4-3, and they've won 2 straight, but there's still a little skepticism right now coming off a 12-9 overtime win over the Browns. People aren't quite certain yet that the Titans are at the level of last year or better.
John Glennon is joining us here. He is a veteran sports writer down in Nashville, where we're heading this weekend. We will be partying at Piranha's in Nashville on Friday and Saturday. That is downtown, famous for their donut burgers. You can check them out on the web as well. You can check John Glennon out at Glennon on Sports on Twitter, as well as at Titans Online. This intelligent WNST conversation is brought to you by our friends at Freedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. Choose the right lender. Get out to Freedmont.com. Get their Freedmont education if you're buying, selling, or just need some quality advice on what direction to go. Freedmont Mortgage is the answer for you. Deli Issues down on Wise Avenue in my homeland of Dundalk, serving up those New York-style deli sandwiches, Reuben's, corned beef, that curly fryer. I'm going to get a Dundalk Owl added there very soon, if not a Hollabird Eagle. Tasty Pickles, they cater in. DeliBaltimore.com, they're on Wise Avenue. I would just get the corned beef because it's tasty, so go do that. John, last thing for you, man, the growth of the Predators and what we're going to see down there, and our days as being younger men running around with Trotz and young draft picks and all that stuff. Dude, I don't know where Trotz was, and I literally have not had a conversation with him about watching the Stanley Cup Finals. All I could see when that Sea of Gold came out and the next celebrity was singing the national anthem and the original anthem singer was pissed about it, and the street scenes, and it's 100 degrees and there's hockey inside and there's 80,000 people lined up all over Broadway in a sea of gold there. All I could think about was, man, it's really a shame Trotz didn't get a chance to participate in this, and it's really a shame that the Capitals couldn't have made last year the year they got there, because that would have been a hell of a thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been great to see Barry Trotz come back here. With Washington, would have been so many storylines. But yeah, I agree. I mean, last year was unbelievable in terms of the hockey atmosphere down here, and there were some lean times here, certainly with the hockey. Not necessarily because of a lack of wins. Barry almost always put a good product on the ice and had a lot of wins. But, ownership situation here was very tenuous for a few years. It looked like this team was headed to Canada, probably around 2007 or so. So Barry had to coach his way through that, had to coach his way through a fire sale. And he deserves all kinds of credit for what he did. At one stretch, 7 of 8 seasons, the Predators made the playoffs, and they never had the big long run. But for what he did on not a great budget a lot of times, it was a tremendous accomplishment here. And I thought last year, I'm kind of I grew up in D.C. as I mentioned earlier. I've always been a kind of a Capitals fan at heart, and I thought last year was going to be the year for them. I mean, we probably thought that many times over the years, but I really had a good feeling about last year. Would have been something to see, but not to be. But tremendous atmosphere down in Nashville, and hockey has, if it hadn't before, hockey has certainly arrived at this point.
Well, and this football season, this is the year the Titans have arrived, right? Like, this is, as we look at it, as we come down there playing a game, as the leaves have changed, they have a real chance of winning the division here. The Colts aren't coming back to life. I think you got problems with Houston and that quarterback down there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And we can't talk trash about Jacksonville because they were kicking our ass 44-0 5 weeks ago,
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, certainly you got the Titans at the top of the division with Jacksonville right now. They hammered Jacksonville earlier this year down in Jacksonville, put up 37 points on them. But then, when you look at what they did against Houston thumped them. That was really, when Deshaun Watson, I think it was only his second start, and he was something else already. So it's kind of up for grabs. But it's certainly, as the AFC South is so often, it is there for the taking for the Titans. So they're going to try to extend that winning streak this Sunday at the expense of your boys there.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, keep the beer cold down there, keep the chicken hot, and more than anything, we're looking for some good weather down there and some fun. We got a lot of fans coming down there to see the new It Place, Nashville, Tennessee. Who knew that it was going to become the It Place 20 years ago, Glennon, right?
Absolutely. Bring it on, though. It's supposed to be about 70 degrees down here, nice and sunny, so you guys should have an outstanding time.
First beer's on me and Piranhas, and keep the country music away from you because you know how to roll that way. See you later, John. Hey, it's tough to keep the country music away down in Nashville. He's Glennon on sports, out on Twitter and at Titans Online. He contributes there. Longtime sports writer at the Tennessean, and I've been knowing him a long time going back to our Barry Trott's early days with the Nashville Predators. We'll be down there at Piranhas on Friday and Saturday. We'd love to see everybody stop down. Free admission. It's a sports bar. Come as you are. Wear some purple. Let them know we sent you. I'll be sitting at the bar in the afternoon on Friday and into the evening on Saturday, probably watching some college football, having some fun. Why not, right? Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and, of course, streaming live online on our buyatoyota.com audio vault, as well as through the Give a Spit app and the fantastic stuff we're doing out there on our in our audio vault. The Planet Fitness sponsors our WNST morning newspaper. That comes to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning digitally via our friends at Planet Fitness, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, but it's always free to get our morning newspaper at 7 a.m. Last but never least, any breaking news on Joe Flacco and the situation there as to whether he's going to play, you'll get it first on the WNST tech service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Of course, Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST, all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.